Hello, Gabe Heller here, Hohenzollern on YouTube and Hannah Brown Couch on Twitch. I don't normally like to do stuff in creative mode, but this is a creative mode build because I was having a really hard time figuring out how to use the new Buildcraft Refinery. It's not just one block anymore, it takes a lot more than that. You've got a couple of choices how to do it, but this is the one that I figured out first and it seems to work pretty well. So of course the first thing you want to do is find an oil deposit. That one over there is what they look like before you've started pumping the oil out, but as you can see, as you pump it, the oil slowly disappears. You've got a pump here, and a redstone engine powering it with a lever to turn the redstone engine on. Okay, so it's night. I'm going to wait till day to talk more about it, but I will try and explain what I've learned about Buildcraft oil. So as you can see, there's not just one kind of oil or fuel, there are many kinds of oil and fuel. Now what you'll get when you pump the oil out of the world is oil cool. Anything that says cool after it, except for residue, you can burn in these, the combustion engines. But if you burn something that isn't called fuel, if it's oil, or, well, you can't burn residue, so I guess if it still says oil anywhere in it, then it will produce residue when it burns. So that's what you want to avoid. As a result of doing this refining, you want to turn all the oil into some kind of fuel. Okay. And then you'll be able to burn it without producing residue, which you'll need to pump out of your engines, or let collect there until I don't know what happens when it collects there. Now I jump-started this with some oil, so there is a little residue in this one engine. But the rest of these are running on fuel. They don't have any residue. As you can see. There we go. So, the first thing you're going to want to do is heat up the oil using a heat exchanger. Now, these were a little confusing because there wasn't much explanation as to how to build them. So the direction that you're facing, if you place 3 in a row, then this will become an input here and an output there. There's also another input here and an output there. You can extend these up to 5 long. There you go. That's the maximum length for a heat exchanger. So what the heat exchanger does is it takes one cool fluid and one hot fluid or gas, runs them past each other, which heats up the cool fluid and cools down the hot fluid. So there are 3 temperatures of fluids: cool, hot, and searing, like so. And you can only swap between 2 nearby ones. So you can make hot fluid cool and cool fluid hot, or you can make searing fluid hot and hot fluid searing. You might also be able to make cool fluid searing and searing fluid cool, but I haven't tried that yet. If you have 2 hot fluids, you can't use a heat exchanger to make one cool and the other searing. That just doesn't work. I tried that earlier. Okay, so here's the pump. It's pumping up the oil, and the oil is going directly into a heat exchanger to heat it up into oil hot, which is then going into this distiller here. Okay? The distiller splits the hot oil into mixed light fuel, hot, and heavy oil, which comes out here. Both of those are hot. We're going to use the hot mixed fuels to heat up the oil. Now I had to jumpstart this by putting a bucket of lava in here to heat up the first bucket of oil because I didn't have any fuel yet coming out of the distiller. Okay, so this produces one of the main byproducts. In fact, you could call it a product of the distillery, which is mixed light fuels cool. This can be burned in engines, but you can also run it through a distiller yet again to split it into, let's see, what are they called? Gaseous fuel and regular fuel. Fuel cool, there we go, and gaseous fuel cool. Both of which can be burned as well in combustion engines, and they will produce more than this does on its own. So you split it up and it becomes more efficient. That's nice. I'm not currently doing that, I'm just storing it, but we could have another distiller over here that was also running it. That was also splitting it up into the final products. Okay. So then what do you do with this dense oil? You can just throw it away if you want, but if you want more efficiency, which I do, then you want to heat it up to searing. So I'm putting it through another heat exchanger here. Now I had to jumpstart this one also with a bucket of lava, but now it is running on the output of this distiller. So this distiller is splitting the dense oil searing into dense fuel, which is burnable, but this dense fuel is searing, so it has to be cooled down. So we cool it down, and in the same heat exchanger that is warming up the dense oil. Okay. Now, after we've cooled it down once, it's still hot. It was searing over there, so now it's hot. And then we have to run it through another heat exchanger. And this one is being, the cool fluid is just water, and that just escapes as steam and is destroyed. But at the end, then, you have dense fuel. And this dense fuel you can use to run all of the combustion engines. I had to jumpstart them with 1 bucket of oil. But once they were running, and I was producing this dense fuel, then I could just run them all on the dense fuel. And so this is the pipe that's piping all the dense fuel to them. Now this distiller also produces residue, but the residue is useless. And it's better here, I think, than inside my engines, where it might cause them to stop. But we've got a void pipe here from Buildcraft that is sopping that up. That is destroying all of the residue. So the one thing that I did that's a little cheaty that isn't Buildcraft is this ProjectRed stuff here for running combustion engines. Combustion engines are well known for exploding, but a very simple way to keep them from exploding is to turn them off on a regular basis. So I have these timers here. They're set to an interval of quite a few minutes. So at the end of that time, the timer will send a signal which will turn this NOT gate off, which will turn both engines off. And once the engines are off, they won't turn on again until they're cool. So that is a very simple way of keeping them from overheating and exploding. Now, as soon as you put a bucket of any fuel in them yourself, by dropping it here or right-clicking on it, they will start again, even if they're not cool. So be careful if you're fueling them manually to begin with, that you don't give them fuel when they're off, or they might turn on and then overheat. And similar, so it takes 2 combustion engines to run this distiller, because it's running full-time all the time. But this distiller, well, obviously when the engines are shut off, it won't run. But this distiller here, this only produces about half as much of this dense oil as it takes in oil. So this dense oil, the distiller for it only needs 1. Took me a while to figure this out. Only needs 1 combustion engine to run, but I have set it to turn off slightly less often because it takes just a little more than half the power to keep up with all of the dense fuel. And as you can see, we're not quite keeping up, but we're close to keeping up. There's only like a bucket in there. Okay, so we're saving this. This is the dense fuel, and that's product 1. That dense fuel, cool, will power a combustion engine at 4 megajoules per tick. Excuse me. The other things that we'll end up with, that was just a little lag there. Okay, so the other things that we will end up with are, let's see here, mixed light fuels, cool, which will run at 3 megajoules per tick. But if you then run that through a distiller, you will get fuel, cool, which, there we go, which runs at 6 megajoules per tick, and you will also get gaseous fuel. There it is, cool, which will run at 8 megajoules per tick. And so that's pretty much the maximum that you can get out of one of these combustion engines. All of that will run with no residue. Now the only other thing is that we needed this tank here, this holding tank, which I'm constantly having to slowly, I mean it doesn't build up very fast, not at this rate, but every once in a while I have to add another tank to the top just so that it doesn't get overfull. But the reason for that is that this distiller, because it's, as you can see, it's at the top of the tank, that's because it's a gas. So when, and because it's a gas, it produces a little bit more per volume than it takes in as oil, which means that it builds up here, and if you don't have a place to store it, then eventually your distiller shuts down because it's full of the stuff. Okay, so yeah, that's our basic setup there. I think I've covered it all. Let's just have a little look around it. And I guess that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this, hope you understood it, and now you can build your own Buildcraft Refinery with the new 1.12 1.12.2 version of Minecraft. Bye for now.
Warning, warning, this video is almost over. Warning, warning, it's time to choose another one. This has gone on far too long, time to wake up and sing along. Warning, warning, this video is over now.